Is the world ready? So it's been a little while since I've talked about Venom and what's going on with that. I don't know if I talked about the fact that Tom Hardy has been cast as Eddie Brock, and it is confirmed that it is Eddie Brock. It's not Flash Thompson. It's not. I can't remember I mean, there have been a number of Venoms. It's not any of the alternates. It's not Agent Venom. It is Eddie Brock. And also we have a director. It's Ruben Fleischer, who made Zombieland. So thankfully, Alex Kurtzman, who had been attached to it a long time, and the director of The Mummy, he's not on this. So that's where we're starting from. And now there was a new nugget that dropped in regards to what could be in the movie. And there was mention of Carnage. Now, I want to first address the way that most sites appear to be reporting this. Most sites seem to be saying, Carnage will be the villain in Venom. The wording of the original article, which was in the Hollywood Reporter, said that the villain Carnage would be included. Now, lots of sites or whatever are choosing to read that as Carnage is the villain of this movie. The actual wording doesn't say that explicitly. It just says the villain Carnage will be included. That means that he's just going to be there somewhere and acknowledging the fact that he is a villain. It does not mean he is the villain of this film. And personally speaking, I'm hoping that he's not. So before I get too far into this, I still want to reiterate, I think this idea of a standalone Venom movie that where we're not getting Venom properly introduced in a Spider-Man movie first, and the idea of a hard R horror version of Venom, I don't think it's a good idea. But it's what they're doing, so if this is what it's gonna be, here, I do have some thoughts about the best way to do this, what I don't think is a great idea, because if we're gonna get the movie regardless, I'd like it to be the best that it can possibly be. So, in my mind, there should not be a villain, main real supervillain of the first movie. In my mind, if you're going to do it as a horror movie, the horror should be in the symbiote. It should be the alien suit itself. So the horror should be what that thing is capable of. The horror should be how that is affecting Eddie. And by the end of the movie, he has more or less managed to gain control over that, and they begin their symbiotic relationship. I think the film should be the struggle for control between the two of them before they kind of come to, sort of a mutual, okay, we're going to work together by the very end. And you set up Carnage along the way in there. Maybe you just set up Cletus Cassidy. Maybe you can have the Spawn symbiote actually bond with him in a post-credit sequence. However you want to do that. But depending on where they pick up with Eddie, because if Eddie, Cletus's backstory is that he's a serial killer, he's doing time, he's sharing a cell with Eddie. So, I mean, you can do the connection that way. There's a million ways to introduce him into the story, but I do not think Carnage should be the villain in this first movie, because to establish the suit, to establish Eddie, to establish their bonding together, to have that actually have meaning as opposed to just, and now he's got the suit, and just lose all possible impact of that. The focus really needs to be on him, and to try to integrate Carnage in on top of that, I think it's going to be too much. I don't think it's going to work properly to have Carnage serve as the villain in that first movie. I think, as I said, that first movie should really, if Spider-Man is not appearing in this, which right now it's been brought up that it's possible he might, but right now it's unconfirmed, because as it stands, Tom Holland's contract does not include spin-offs. It accounts for his appearance in Civil War and Infinity War, and also 2 more sequels to Spider-Man Homecoming, but right now his contract does not include this other stuff. So until it does, we can't count on his inclusion. So right now we have to assume that we can't guarantee that he'll be in here. So if you're going to make this work, focusing just on Venom, you really need to put the focus there. Not introduce the suit as quickly as possible, not slap it on him, and not have him go off and fight something. And if they put the focus on the struggle of him gaining control of the suit, then that will bring more poignancy to when Carnage, Cletus becomes one with the Carnage symbiote and becomes the full-blown monster in your sequel, because then it's like Venom having overcome and come to grips with this power, so that he's not an utter monster, has to deal with someone who did not come to grips with it, or at least is not holding back the way that he is. So you get that thing that comic books and comic book movies like to do, which is the dark version of themselves. It's what Venom could have been, then he has to take that on. But I do think you need to have the first movie dedicated pretty solely just to Venom and make the horror rooted in the Venom symbiote, not in whatever Venom's gonna be fighting. Now, those are my own thoughts on it. And mainly a lot of this is spawned from the fact that, as I said, people are leaping to the conclusion that Carnage is the villain in this first Venom movie. It's not necessarily the case. I personally hope that it isn't. But if you're going to try and build a franchise out of Venom, really, aside from Spider-Man, the one major character to tie to him, who does not necessarily have to be tied back to Spider-Man, is Carnage, which to me, again, it makes it all the more reason not to make him the actual villain of this first movie, because then you've basically just burned off your one really notable villain for this guy to face. So we'll see what we're gonna get. The idea of Carnage, I'm most interested in visually seeing how Carnage is gonna come to life, because I think it's gonna have to be a lot of CGI, and whenever something's a lot of CGI, it can make me both excited and nervous. So something that needs to be brought to life through a lot of CGI brings the possibility of getting something really unique if they go in and really put imagination into it. Or if they don't put the proper money behind it, then it could just look really crappy. Or if they don't put a lot of thought into it, they could end up doing something that really could have been done with practical effects. So we'll see what we end up with. But I like the idea of Carnage visually, just the suit always in motion, like, because it's got that kind of black and red spot, but it's not a pattern. It's just this sort of patchiness of the black and the red. So I want that to be shifting and gooping out in the tendrils, and then they come back and they do something. I want constant move. I want constant jittery movement on this thing, because he can't stay still. He's too eager looking for the next thing that he can kill. So I'm excited to see visually what we get with Carnage. Again, I do hope we don't get him full on until a sequel. And I may have to move up finding and tracking down some of the more recent Carnage appearances, because my main knowledge of the guy is from his introduction in the 90s and Maximum Carnage primarily. And that's the main thing I know him from. And I've had some people recommend some of his more recent stuff, appearances to check out. So maybe I need to prioritize that before this project gets too much further along. So Carnage in the Venom movie. I think a lot of us suspected this was going to happen at some point, but what are your thoughts, your hopes, your fears on all this? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I am also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast, also available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.